Well, thank you all. So I have a few comments. I'm not sure I can match Steve going back and forth, but you know, it's such a privilege and an honor to be here with you all today in this beautiful courtroom. I hope you'll take a minute to just soak in the beauty of this place, of this amazing historic courtroom, and think about all that's gone on in this place, in places just like this around Riverside County, the way that we settle our disputes in our country. And it really is, you should be proud. You should be proud of our system. And it truly is the best in the world, and maybe the best that's ever existed. I want to start, I've got some comments. I have people to thank and acknowledge, but I want to start on a personal note. I want to give thanks to God for all the blessings as well as all the hardships that I've had in my life. I can't see anymore, I'm old. Take this off. Everything that I've succeeded at, all my accomplishments, all my success has been God's grace working directly in my life, I assure you. All of the bad decisions and mistakes I've made, and there have been more than a few, have been when I tried to do it on my own and did not seek God's guidance. And so I want to start by publicly acknowledging, giving thanks to Almighty God for allowing me to be here today and serving our community as your district attorney. I also want to introduce a few of my family members. I want to start with those who are here in spirit. God blessed me with truly wonderful parents. They made me who I am today. My father, Jerry Hestrin, my mother, Cecilia Garcia Barba, they both taught me so many lessons that I carry with me into every situation and every day. They both passed away in 2017, 2 years after I was first sworn in as district attorney. But I can't have an occasion like this when I don't thank them publicly and look forward to when we can be together again. My sister Lori is here from Yucaipa. She's here with her mom, Marilyn. Her husband, Steve, couldn't be here today. Thank you for being here, Lori and Marilyn. My sister Michelle is here from Phoenix. Her husband, Michael, also couldn't be here today. He got stuck in traffic. Daughters Isabella and Bianca are here, and Martine Jimenez is here, longtime family friend and companion to my mom. Thank you for being here, Michelle. I have 3 children, Brandy, Alex, and Luca. Together and individually, they're the love of our lives. Our 2 older daughters are both away and couldn't be here today, but my son Luca is the handsome lad in the 3-piece suit. I don't think you can miss him, so he'll be signing autographs after. Finally, I want to introduce my amazing wife and partner, Benilda. She's in the front row here. Will you raise your hand? She's truly the center of our family life. Without her love and support, I would not be able to accomplish anything professionally or personally. And I'm so grateful for her love and support through the years. Someone said to me recently that I don't post enough pictures on social media, despite what Steve said. If you peruse my social media accounts, you won't see any of my family there. So someone asked me, why don't you post more pictures of your family? I said to them, well, it's security concerns, and that's partially true. I don't want to plaster them all over social media for obvious reasons, but it wasn't the complete truth. The complete truth is that God has blessed me with riches in the form of a loving family, and I don't want to jinx it by showing it off on social media. So I keep it sort of to myself, but I want you to know that I know what a lucky man I am to have the love and support of these people you see here in front of me today, and I don't take it for granted. I want to acknowledge former District Attorney Grover Trask. He's here with his wife, Cindy. Grover, wave. Grover built the office that I currently lead, and we all owe him an enormous debt of gratitude for setting the example of how to be tough, ethical prosecutors. We follow in his footsteps every day. I'll tell you something funny Grover said to me when I first was sworn in the first time, asked for his advice about the swearing-in ceremony, and he said to me, first time you get sworn in, you want to do it outside the steps of the courthouse because it's the first time and the community will come out, and second time you'll probably go inside, beautiful courtroom, and the third time nobody cares, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, you probably just do it in your office. So I took his advice until today. I just love this courtroom. I want to acknowledge 2 other individuals. John Aki is my chief assistant DA. He's here with his wife, Crystal. John has been my friend and partner in this work for more than 25 years. We started as prosecutors together decades ago. For the last 8 years, he's been my chief assistant DA. It's an enormous responsibility. He's been a steady and powerful force inside the office for years, but he's also been an enormous influence inside in our county across the criminal justice system. So he's going to be retiring soon. I'm going to have a lot to say at his various celebrations, retirement celebrations. But I didn't want to pass up the chance to thank him and acknowledge him. Also want to acknowledge Chief Joe Del Giudice. He's here with his wife, Valeria. Joe. He's been the chief of our Bureau of Investigation for the last 8 years. He's done an amazing job of rebuilding and leading the Bureau. He's also going to retire in the next year or two or so. We don't know exactly when. But I didn't want to pass up the chance to thank him and acknowledge him for the great work and years of leadership and service. Also want to recognize Virginia Blumenthal. Where's she at? Virginia. Virginia's a great lawyer in town, one of my most worthy adversaries over the years. And that's putting it politely. We did battle in the courtroom, but I learned so much from Virginia. Over the years, we went from bitter adversaries to good friends. It's been 25 years now that we know each other. So Virginia, thank you for being here. Jason Anderson is here in the back. Jason is the great DA from our neighboring county in San Bernardino. He was sworn in recently to a second term, and I really appreciate his friendship and guidance. We bounce ideas off each other all the time. We're very, very like-minded DAs. And so Jason, thank you for being here. Not long after the election that just passed, I found myself in the office of an attorney and friend. He'd been a prosecutor more than 30 years ago, and he'd had a very successful legal career, but he got his start in the Riverside County District Attorney's Office as a prosecutor. Before he moved on to other things, he did some time as a defense attorney. He worked as counsel for a large corporation. And so there I was in his office, a beautiful, ornate office, so successful man, successful lawyer. In his office, I noticed a plaque up on the wall with Grover Trask's name on it, and a photo of a newspaper clipping of when he was hired as a deputy DA at the Riverside County DA's office. It was a different time back then. We had a newspaper that actually wrote articles when the DA hired a new deputy. I asked him about it, about the plaque and the story, the newspaper article up on his wall, and he said to me with no hesitation, "It was the best job I ever had, and I still miss it to this day." Now, maybe he said that because I'm the DA. But I don't think so. I didn't get the sense he was trying to flatter, and he had no reason. He didn't need anything from me. Let's assume he was sincere. I assumed he was sincere. But I thought about that comment because here was someone who did not spend his whole career, give his whole career to prosecution work, but still he felt this deep, abiding connection to the work that we do and that he did all those years ago. And it was still something he carried with him, a point of pride. You could see it. It got me thinking, why? What is it? What is it about this work that generates the feeling among many prosecutors that this is not a job at all, but a calling, a vocation of sorts? To answer that, I hope you'll indulge me and allow me to briefly share a bit of my own journey, my own career journey, and I'll call it the education of a prosecutor. You'll be shocked to know that my education as a prosecutor did not start in law school. As a new prosecutor in 1997, I came straight from Stanford Law School, and my head was stuffed with all kinds of theories and ideas about the law and how the law is supposed to work, most of which, truth be told, had to be discarded and unlearned as my true education began on the job and in the courtroom. I'm still thinking I should ask for a refund from my law school. Maybe I'll get around to that this year. For those of you who guided and mentored me along the way, thank you for either ignoring or forgetting or pretending to forget all the stupid things I must have said and thought. I know there were many. Grover, I'm glad you didn't ask too many questions when you interviewed me. I'm sure you wouldn't have hired me. My real education as a prosecutor began in earnest when I began to have contact with the victims of crime. As the crimes that I was prosecuting became progressively more serious as I moved up in the office, the victims, these people that I met, were more and more injured. traumatized, and victimized. They began to have a greater impact on me as a person and as a prosecutor. In the early 2000s, I found myself working in the sexual assault and child abuse unit here in downtown Riverside. We were incredibly busy. It was some of the most difficult and challenging and yet rewarding work that I've ever done in my life. And still to this day it is. In some ways, I've never recovered from the experience. In a good way. I'll explain. In that role, I met countless children who had been used and abused, beaten, and brutalized by truly evil people. And I thought, and though it's been many years since I've prosecuted those cases, I still remember them and their stories. I can close my eyes and I can see their faces. I can hear their voices, and I remember their determination and their courage. My education as a prosecutor did not come from books and doesn't involve theories of the law. It came from sitting with and being with people, big and small, who have been victimized by horrendous crimes and horrific evil. One central truth that I learned along the way was that none of what I did in prosecution was about me. It was about them, the victims. Imagine, I know it's uncomfortable, but imagine the injustice that rape victims feel. Their God-given dignity violated by a violent criminal. As prosecutors, we connect with those victims, but we connect with them precisely as we find them in their brokenness. We become part of their story, and they become part of ours, and we're never the same afterwards. My education as a prosecutor came from seeing the determination in the eyes of a 6-year-old little girl as I held her hand while we were walking to court. She was going to testify that day against her rapist, who was also her own grandfather. Her courage the day in the courtroom was so moving that afterwards there wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom, not the judge, not the deputy. It was her courage, not mine, that brought about justice that day. There are no movies made about her. There's no books written about her. But I carried the lessons that I learned from her courage and determination that day in the courtroom. I carried those lessons with me the rest of my time as a prosecutor, into every new case that I did and every courtroom I stepped into, including still today. My education as a prosecutor came from explaining the court and trial process to the mother of a murdered son, and coming to understand in a small way the truly endless grief, loss, and true injustice that she felt and was going to feel for the rest of her life, no matter what I said or did. Through it all, I realized that this woman was counting on me, relying on me to get justice for her son. It's a startling realization in the life of a prosecutor. It's a long way from the heady arguments and counter-arguments that you find in law school. It's not theoretical. It's all too real. It's almost tangible. In that situation and many others, just like it, I promised that I would do whatever I could within the bounds of the law and my ethics to get justice for her and for her son. I remember being struck with fear when I said things like that, thinking, what if I fail? What if she gets no justice? But it was these experiences, one by one, and over the years, that made a prosecutor out of me. Along the way, I came to realize that the need for justice is deep and abiding in our makeup as human beings. When a person is victimized, the quest and the hunger for justice becomes consuming. They cannot rest or begin to recover or heal until someone has stood up for them and acknowledged in a public way what they lost, how they suffered, and that their suffering has meaning. That what happened to them was wrong, and that the rest of us, the community that they live in, condemn it and refuse to tolerate it. And yes, until the person harmed has been punished and felt the consequences for their actions. I learned along the way that the need for justice is not something that can be rationalized or theorized away. Many prominent voices in government and academia these days attempt to do just that. They argue that punishing the guilty doesn't actually benefit the victims or society. or that we shouldn't have punishments at all, just pure rehabilitative efforts for even the most violent and unrepentant among us. Some of these so-called reformers say that we've had it all wrong all these decades. Now they know better. Honestly, this is just pure academic drivel and nonsense that has seeped into the larger culture. It's my speech, so I'm going to tell you what I really think. These so-called reformers seek to weaken or even destroy a justice system they profoundly misunderstand. And they don't realize that they're playing with fire. They don't realize that in the absence of a functioning and well-balanced justice system, we don't find peace and harmony, quite the opposite. We find endless cycles of violence, chaos, and bloodshed. I know some of these things are hard to hear, but I want you to understand why I lead the office the way that I do. My leadership of the DA's office comes directly from my education as a prosecutor and has been forged in the courtrooms like this one and many others after years of fighting for and learning from real people who have faced the loss of everything that matters to them. Don't misunderstand me. I favor rehabilitation efforts for the criminal justice system. I support second chances for first-time and low-level offenders. We can and we should use the criminal justice system smartly to incentivize people to make changes in their own lives and turn away from a life of crime. And we do that so well in Riverside County. You heard Steve Harmon. We collaborate. We work together in this county. Same with Virginia. And I'm proud of those efforts. We will continue to lead in that respect. But I must tell you, as your DA, from my perspective, in recent years, our justice system has gone off the rails. We've forgotten some important principles, and now we're out of balance and broken. We have to course correct before it's too late. We must once again hear the voices of the victims crying out for justice. We must hear them and not turn away, not rationalize away, not theorize away what they're saying and what they're calling us to do. Despite what society may say today or whatever supposedly new ideas are popular in the moment, in this county, we don't bend to the whims of whatever fad is coming from academia. We reject the culture that says we should take the easy route for the sake of expediency. We intentionally choose the path of difficulty and sacrifice, and we will continue to stubbornly and steadfastly hold to the principles of justice, fairness, and accountability, the true principles and pillars of the justice system. Losses suffered by victims and the desire to right wrongs, that's what drives us as prosecutors. That's what we face day in and day out. It's what the community has asked us to do to protect them from those who have and would harm them. For me, this has always been more than a job. Since the day I was hired by Grover, it's been a true calling. It made me grow up as a person, to see life for what it is, not for what I or others might wish it to be. This is my life's work. If done correctly, it requires us to pour ourselves out for someone else who's been gravely injured or suffered a terrible injustice. We prosecutors, investigators, victim advocates, our support staff, we get the chance to give completely to something that is outside of and greater than ourselves, and to use all our energy and passion and grit and tenacity to fight for someone who at the moment cannot fight for themselves. Weighed against the unfathomable loss that victims suffer, we realize that our own comfort doesn't matter. We work late. We work weekends. We miss holidays. We miss precious time with our families. We have sleepless nights, seemingly endless days. In today's digital, glittering, and narcissistic world, where everyone, at least online, seems like they're living on Easy Street, this seems awful, I'm sure, to some. This way of life, this kind of work. But as my friend, the attorney, said from the beginning of my speech, it's the best job you could ever have, the best work you'll ever do. This is why being a prosecutor and being your district attorney for the last 8 years has been the true privilege and honor of my life. As I wrap up, I want to thank our attorneys, our paralegals, our investigators, our ITs, investigative technicians, our victim specialists, and all our clerical and other support staff who make up the men and women of the Riverside County District Attorney's Office. They live out every day what I've just described for you. And it's their sacrifices now, collectively, that make the office great. It is they who respond to the calling they hear to step forward and fight for justice and do the right thing for the right reason every day, every time. And for them all, I'm profoundly proud to call them colleagues and honored to lead them. Finally, I want to thank the citizens of Riverside County for the enormous trust you all have placed in me and my leadership team. I want you to know that I'm still in awe of the majesty of our justice system. It's truly the best in the world, perhaps the best in history of the world. Part of the awe that I feel is the knowledge that the district attorney's office does not and has never belonged to me, any one person, or any of my predecessors. I realize that I'm a temporary caretaker for this office that belongs to you, the people of the county of Riverside. It is your office, and it is for you that I will continue to be steadfast in my resolve to protect this community, to vigilantly uphold the laws as they're written, and be faithful in the execution of my duties as your district attorney. Thank you all for being here so much on this wonderful occasion. God bless you all.